Bernie Sanders spoke to a social democratic politician from Denmark, and they had a great conversation where they highlighted why it is that Denmark consistently ranks as one of the happiest countries in the world. Check it out.
On behalf of at least one American, not Donald Trump, I know.
Denmark.
There's something rotten in Denmark.
At least this one American, let me congratulate you for your enormous accomplishments in creating truly humane societies.
Hello. Oh, hello, Sender. Hello, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Of course.
Why is this happy man from this happy country lying to the American people? Poll after poll seems to suggest that Denmark is one of the happiest countries on earth. Dan, why do you think that is the case?
Well, first of all, it's not the weather. The short answer is that it's because of the welfare state. We have free healthcare, so you don't pay money when you go to your own normal doctor.
No co-payments, what we call co-payments?
We have small co-payment on some medicine, but then again, you can get special help for that if you...
And, you know, what our conservative friends will attack us on, people can't go to the doctor that they want.
In Denmark, you can go to the doctor that you want, and go to the hospital that you want. You even have a right to choose a different hospital than the one that would be normally selected for you. If you feel that it's probably better for me to go to another part of the country because I feel that they have a better treatment, you can do that.
Well, let's back it up here. Remember, you're talking to mostly an American audience,
Sure.
and they don't believe you. Because we know that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The next thing you're probably going to tell me is education is free in Denmark as well. You see, these guys never stop lying.
It doesn't cost you anything. We don't pay tuition in Denmark. Actually, if you're a student, you get a grant from the government.
Not only is school free, they actually pay you.
So it's not free, you pay me to go to college.
Basically, yes.
Not bad, eh?
All right, let me ask you this question. But our right-wing friends will say, well, that's all great, but you're paying a whole lot in taxes. You're paying a lot in taxes. Talk about that.
Well, it's true that we do pay a lot in tax, but we also get a lot back. You get the security that you know that if something happens to you, you lose your job, you'll get the social security. If you get sick, you'll get health care. When you look at it, what you actually get for the money, most people in Denmark, I will argue, are happy to pay the tax that they do.
It's a good deal, in other words.
It's a good deal. I know that President Trump said that Denmark is probably not that good a place to be a citizen.
The White House now released a report in which it warns against Nordic socialism.
Total socialism.
Probably for him, not. For the top 1%, it's probably better to live in the US. But for the other 99%, the average wage in Denmark are quite a bit higher than the average wage here. For instance, if you work at McDonald's in Denmark and you work at McDonald's in the US, you make less than half in the US of what a McDonald's worker make in Denmark.
That's the reality of socialism.
A country like Denmark is a country with cohesion, with social capital, with trust among people.
Is that the direction that we want to go in? Bernie Sanders likes it.
Scandinavia, not just Denmark, but Sweden and Norway and Finland, have accomplished something that they deserve enormous credit for. Think about the long chain of human history and the abysmal poverty that so many people have had to deal with, and the lack of education and the lack of healthcare. But this is not a perfect society. You'd be the first to most mention you have your share of problems, and you debate it every day. But that they have gone a long way toward eliminating poverty to provide a secure and decent standard of living for the overwhelming majority of their people, that their people live with a lot less stress than our people do because of that security. It's no small thing. It really is not.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. And can I also just say that you are highly admired in Denmark, and we wish you all the luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I love that. That's so great. You know, oftentimes when I think about this ideology that they're talking about, it strikes me as just the bare minimums. Like, that's what it is. That's what we're talking about. When it comes to social democracy, the idea is, hey, give people the bare minimums of life, and then once they have the bare minimums, we can turn around and say, okay, it's on you now. Like, it's a meritocracy now, and it's on you. Or, you know, there's an argument as to whether or not a meritocracy could ever really, truly exist and what exactly that means, and that's a long and detailed and complex conversation. But for the purposes of this conversation, let's just say it is possible to one extent or another. But that's the idea. Okay, give people the bare minimums, and then we're allowed to turn around and say, all right, now it's on you, and if you don't make it in this society and you don't create a living standard or a situation that you enjoy, it's not... I wouldn't feel bad saying, okay, well, you know, hey, maybe you should have made some different choices. But when you have a society where the bare minimums aren't met, I find it really gross and obnoxious to, like, blame people for the situation they're in because they don't have the bare minimums met. So it's like if you run a 100-yard dash and Mitt Romney's son starts at fucking 75 yards in front of you at the 75-yard line, and you're back here at the negative 15-yard line, and then they shoot the gun in the air, you start running, and he wins. And you're like, well, what the fuck? Of course that was going to happen. This is bullshit. And yeah, how can you blame that person who was forced to start at a way different position? So what we're looking at with Scandinavia, everybody should have healthcare, everybody should have education, everybody should have, a living wage. And I actually have one small area of disagreement with them, which is I don't see why you can't have, about the same tax rate that we have now on the working class and the middle class and the poor. So in other words, I'm not in favor of just like, hey, yeah, let's have high taxes on the middle class and let's also give them all of these bare minimums. I think we could fund the bare minimums with probably the current tax rate that we have in the U.S. among the working class. I'm just in favor of a much more progressive tax system, which means you have more brackets, okay, and the higher you go, the higher the rate becomes. So I would knock up those marginal tax rates. I would add many more brackets. Right now, the top bracket is at I think it's like $400,000 or $450,000 a year, and the top tax rate is about 36 or 39% thereabouts. I think maybe 36, probably back to the Bush rates under this new tax law that just passed. So, yeah, I would add, okay, kick that rate up to 40, and then if somebody makes over $10 million, that tax rate for everything above that $10 million line should be much higher. Because you're not going to, people can have the ability to get rich in a system without having the ability to be obscenely wealthy and have so much wealth that by its very nature, it corrupts the democratic process. And that's what we have right now with billionaires and corporations and the mega rich. They basically buy politicians and get whatever legislation they want through, and the politicians ignore working class people. So, and a lot of that has to do with the obscene amounts of income inequality. That we allow money in politics, number one, which is a problem in and of itself, but then also when you allow the owner class to have so much more that it's incomprehensible than the regular guy, well, then they have the ability to buy the politicians and to get what they want. And that's a problem. So I think that in a weird way, Bernie Sanders and the Scandinavian countries, they actually embrace a meritocracy-like system way more than the rigid capitalists do, and certainly than the corporatists do, which is a funny thing to say, because typically when people think of capitalism, they think of meritocracy. But I think that evidence is overwhelming that capitalism does not wind up functioning as a meritocratic system. It ends up functioning more like an oligarchy or a plutocracy or a kleptocracy. Whereas with a social democracy, one could argue, hey, that looks a lot more like a meritocracy because everybody gets a decent starting line, and then you could try to make of yourself whatever you're going to make of yourself. And so it really is about getting those bare minimums met, man. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. And I think people kind of inherently see that. I think people kind of just innately get it. Like, oh, okay, so what these guys are talking about is giving everybody a fair shot. That's what they're talking about. So you mix in elements of capitalism with elements of socialism and social democracy, and then look, for me, yes, fundamentally I am an empiricist, and empirically speaking, Scandinavian countries kick our ass in almost every relevant category, and I think that counts for something. And I'm happy that now this is being brought into the conversation by Bernie Sanders.